Parenthood is tough. When you start having babies, mama is totally occupied 24/7 and dad gets nothing from her. Throw in homeschooling. That's even less. So you have to really work together and work as a team. And that's what we tried to do. When we started home educating, it wasn't my decision. It wasn't his decision. It was our decision. And we approached it in that way. And we enjoyed having this opportunity to actually support each other in what we were doing. I was very fortunate. We lived in a small town, and he could come home for lunch and for supper at 4:30. So he was around a lot. And that, I think, made the huge difference in how well our babyhood and then homeschooling went. You want to tell how we started?
So we started home education when we had sent our daughter to kindergarten because we didn't know any better. We had never heard of this thing. And we had some friends that told us about a book about child development called Better Late Than Early. And we read the book, and it spoke to us because our son was very developmentally delayed. He was a special guy, but we thought probably he's going to have some challenges, and he would have been put in that special class. And when you get into that special class in school, you tend to stay in that special class. And we thought, here's an opportunity to do something. And if we could do it with him, why couldn't we do it with both? So we tried it for a year. And we just continued to do that. Our transition into home education, partially because of the way I'm wired. I became involved in leadership because of some gaps. We didn't have a conference in Manitoba, our province. We said we needed to have a province. We went to a big conference in the United States and said we could do this. Not as big, but we could do it. So we did. And here we stand 37 years later. And it's been quite a ride. I'd just like to make a few comments to the dads here. And because I think that if you're like me, I felt guilty for many years because I was not able to do as much as I'd like to do. I was not able to help as much as I wanted to help because Bev did 99, a whole lot of the work in comparison to me. And I struggled with that. But I would like to say that you can help. And I just like to give you a couple of guidelines for maybe how you can do that. First of all, leave work at work. When the problems that you walk into the house with, maybe you have a box that you could throw them into. Maybe you have go through something that just says that's where it stays outside of the house. Leave it there. And when you come home, don't ask, so honey, what did you do today?
It's more like, here's the kids, bye.
Just your job is not to be the principal, not to be the authority, but to be the cheerleader. And I would just encourage you to do that and to do what you can. We as men want to fix things. Our wives tell us, honey, I'm frustrated, and I want to warn the men, don't be surprised that most every week your wife will want to quit. And our natural inclination is to come up with a list of 10 things that Bev can do by tomorrow to be able to fix all these problems. That's not the answer. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen a whole lot more than you speak. And I would just encourage you to listen and ask one question. How can I help? And then listen. And don't say anything. That's what we need to be doing. Don't always wait to be asked to do something. So if you see the dishes need washing, if you see the floor needs washing, if you see that something in the house needs doing, just do it. And pitch in and take care of the car that needs to be maintained so that your wife doesn't have to worry about will it start tomorrow. We can take care of a lot of these things so that they're things that make sure that the house keeps running, the car keeps running, and that life keeps happening. Show interest in homeschooling, not by quizzing and testing, but by being interested. Go to conferences, read the books, know what it's all about, and investigate and become a cheerleader and know what's happening. There's so much that you can do in that, but do it as a couple as much as you can. Go along. Find a way to be able to participate.
When you start homeschooling when they're really young, it's a huge, overwhelming job. But know that it gets easier. Once you've got like that middle year school, I love the middle years. That was my favorite part about home educating. And I would drag Gerald into all these different schemes I had to educate our children. I sent him to the garbage dump to pick up supplies to put together a go-kart. And him and Luke built a go-kart out of an old riding lawnmower that they extended with welding. And then they had to get an engine, so they stole it off the rototiller, and they turned it into a go-kart. My grandson really wants Gerald to fix it so that he can ride it now. One of the things you really, as a homeschool mom, is you have to be intentional about your time with your husband. He will feel very neglected if he comes home and all you can do is talk about homeschooling and all the problems and all the things that you have to deal with, and it can get overwhelming. You have to be intentional about supporting your husband in other areas as well. Look for common interests so that you can still do something together. We both love to be outdoors. We have canoes and sailboats, and so we try to incorporate that into some of our family time so that we could do that together. Say thank you. How often do you thank your husband for something? It's important to remind him that he's valued in the home. Don't complain about the kids when he first walks in the door. Give him some time. I really loved it when he would come home from work and the kids would just run to the door to say hi to him. My son-in-law doesn't like that. He needs that a little bit of time just to de-stress before he interacts with the kids. Mind you, now he works from home, so he's with them all day long. Have a united approach to parenting. If you don't have a united approach to parenting, no matter whether you homeschool or not, the kids will play you off against each other. Because we homeschool, we know our kids really, really well because we're with them all the time, so there's very few surprises. But every once in a while, they try and sneak something in. So make sure that you have the same vision for all of the different activities and like things like TV or internet or all those kinds of things. Make a plan ahead of time so that the answer is the same. Things that we did not have to deal with was electronics, which is huge right now for you families now raising kids in this culture. Our children graduated in 2000 and 2002. There were no cell phones. There were no iPads. We barely had computers that worked with dial-up. So you're working in a whole different world than we were. And I would encourage you to set limits. We watch our daughter now having limits. Her daughters, which are almost 16 and almost 18, they both have cell phones, but they only get an hour of access to the internet or anything on their phones a day. And even at that, my daughter has full control of it.
One of the things that we've done as a homeschool organization in our province is to try to encourage husband and wife to participate. So we priced the conference so that the spouse comes free. And people will say, well, my husband isn't coming. Couldn't I get it 50%? The answer is, well, he's free. It's not a discount. And it's made a difference over the years. We now have, we basically have 50-50 that comes to the conference. And I think it's important to be able, as a policy, to say, how can we encourage that bond? I was at a homeschool conference, and one of the moms asked a question, and she said, how can I force my husband to support me? And that was one of the questions I struggled with. Okay, how do I answer this? And the answer is you can't. You can pray, you can encourage, you can work on it together, but it takes together. And for those that are not together, we need to be encouraging, particularly the men, for how can they be involved and how can we encourage them in that. So that's, I think, one of our challenges, but it's one of our opportunities. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so my name's Ruth Barber. This is my husband, Charles. So we've just got a few things to share today. My notes have just gone off, so that's not very helpful, is it? All this modern tech. Just a sec. Yeah. Okay, so we're coming from a perspective of 20 years of home ed experience. We've got just 2 of our children that are still at the back end of their educational experience at home. They've never been into school. So if you've just started or however far along that road you are, you will probably know that it is a road that has many twists and turns, and there are very many bumps, some highs and some lows to navigate. And so what I want to do to start with is just to identify, just from our perspective, 3 highs and 3 lows that I want to just share with you, and then just a little bit about each of those in turn. And how that's impacted us personally as well, and our relationship and our family relationships. So in terms of triumphs, as I say, our children have never been to school. We had 7 little ones in 9 years, so it was a very intense journey, particularly in the early years. But one of the things that I look back on and gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling, even now, is just that we taught them to read. We taught them to read, and just the delight that has given me that, nobody else has done that. We've done that in our home. And that is just so precious, and it just fills me with delight every day, because that is a whole world that's been opened up to them, and it's like we've done that in a family setting. That's wonderful. And sometimes you need to stop and notice the little things, because when you're in a process of teaching, there's always the next thing that you go on to. So, that is in a way a small thing, because we were doing that for many years as each one got to that stage. But, you have to stop and notice sometimes some of the real key things that you learn. So that was the first one. The second one, the second triumph, is that we all have now very positive family relationships. And I don't think that's something that you can take for granted. So our children they've got a relationship with each one of their siblings. That's 7 siblings, all that have good relationships with each other and with the parents. And that's not normal in today's society. And the third thing is that they all have had a measure of academic success. Our older ones have gone to university and beyond and are in jobs. But more than that, they are secure in who they are. They are secure in what they believe. They know their own identity. And I count that as a real triumph. Because again, today it's a confusing world to be a part of. And to me, that is a real triumph. So those are the highs that I'm going to share. And then troubles, well, I think the biggest blessing is having your children around 24/7 all day, every day. But it's also the biggest challenge because it's hard. And I think it tests the strongest relationships. But through it, we've had to learn to work together. We've had to learn to pull together through the tough times. And there's 3 things that I want to share about that, because the choices that we make, whenever there's a bump, you've got to choose that you're going to actually use that as a positive, as a benefit, and find the learning in it. So the first thing is that we've always chosen to be right with one another. And by that, I mean there are times where we've all had to say sorry when things have been done that have been wrong. And we've all also had to say, I forgive you, when wrongs have been done to us. And that's a real key in restoring family relationships. But that's something that is a choice that we've done. That's how you resolve conflict, and it's how you model good relationships, and it's what prepares your children for life beyond the family as well. So that's the first thing. The second choice we've made is that we have decided to pull together and work as a couple through every issue, similar to what our last speakers were saying. So we haven't kind of taken issues and decided to work, I'm going to work out this issue because, I'm the one that's at home with the children all the time. We've always worked on it together. That has been a choice that we come at every angle, every decision together as a couple. And the third thing is that we've always chosen to love our children and to give them the space to make mistakes, but then to actually grow through that. So that means choosing to love them when it's hard. And it means facing all and every issues, however difficult they are, however testing. It means facing them and choosing to help them see the impact of their actions, of their decisions, and teaching them to take responsibility for that. Okay, so on that note, I'll pass on to Charles.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to say again what's already been said, that bringing up children is not easy, and it's not supposed to be easy. It's like it's God's challenge for you as a couple. It's a road that you've never walked before. And when you are home educating, all that is sort of is doubly there, because you don't send your children, you don't have time. When you're not with them, they're there all the time, and you have to deal with them all the time. And it's a really fast growing curve, therefore, for you as parents. And that's how it should be. And what we've found, and I think what every family is going to find, is you get desperate. You get to the point where you don't know what the answer is. You don't know how you're going to solve the situation, and you have to sit down and you have to talk, and you have to just take time out and listen and pray and find the road ahead. And each time we've done that over the years, we've found the road ahead. But it's good, and it's good, but it's not easy, and it's real. It exposes your weaknesses, and it makes you deal with them, as Ruth's been saying. So I don't know of anyone who's found it an easy road, and I don't know of anybody who's not had to at times ask for help and ask for support. We've had to learn not to compare ourselves with other people, because otherwise you feel desperate and a complete failure. You have to believe that what you're doing is right, and you have to be prepared for people to disagree with you and say, why are you doing this? Why are you making life so difficult for yourself? You have to sort stuff out between you as a couple. Saying sorry, saying I forgive you. I've had to say sorry to my kids. I remember sitting Sam down. Sam was my oldest boy when he would be about 6 or 8, and he'd been really naughty, and I was furious with him, and I'd sit him down and I'd say, right, Samuel, listen to me. And I looked at him and he looked at me, and it's like I knew how I had to begin. I had to say, right, Samuel, I am sorry for losing my temper. And he'd look at me and I'd say, what do you say? He said, I forgive you, Daddy. And that was how we began. Then I told him off for the next 10 minutes about, then I couldn't scold him really. I just had to say to him, he said, yes, Daddy, I know, Daddy. I said, okay, I forgive you, Samuel, we'll do better tomorrow. And then I had to say sorry to my wife for being controlling. And I guess part of what we heard before is the man always wants to sort of have everything running smoothly. So I'd have to have everything controlled. And then I had to say sorry that that wasn't necessarily the right way to do it. It's good for you. It's good for you. And what's good is then when you see your children blossoming and you see the family coming together, and there are so many ways that very quickly it's exciting, and I've been so proud of them. And it's not because of what we've done. It's just because when you have the freedom and you allow your children to grow naturally, because home educating is so natural, they just blossom. They learn stuff that you've never taught them. They know stuff that surprises you, and then they do things that you never expected them to do. So we used to have a bunch of we live in Bradford, so we've got lots of Asian families around us. We had a bunch of Asian kids used to call on our house, knock on the door, and they say, could you come and play football with us, please, to our kids? Because so 3 or 4 of them would go off and play football. And the reason they went off to play football with them was because they couldn't manage to do football without them, because they did everything at school, and they just end up arguing and fighting, and the whole game would fall to bits. So our guys used to go and play football with them, and sorry. Yeah, just to run the game, and there's so many ways, and sometimes they'd invite neighbours' kids into our garden and the neighbors would come in and they'll be swearing and doing all sorts of stuff. And Tobias, my youngest kid, would say to them, if you don't stop using that language, you will go out of the garden. And you say it quite clear like that.
We'd never said that.
We never dream of saying that to our neighbors, but he said it quite clear. He said, you're not allowed to use that. Not allowed to use that language here. And they respected him for it because they were so good at playing with them and organizing games. And so they learned. And, well, there you go. Yeah, and one of the most exciting things is to see them develop as individuals, to see them just be so different to one another. And so, yeah, all those things are the real positives. But it's relentless, and you have to keep going. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my wife and I, Joy, have been married for 50 years. We have 20 grandchildren. I'm just kidding. If they're accidental homeschoolers, we're accidental panelists. We don't know why we're here. I mean, we wanted to just learn from all of them. But seriously, we've been married for 23 years in a couple weeks. We have 6 kids, so that was real. Our children are 5 through 21, and we've homeschooled ever since. So as I was honest in sharing, there is much for us to learn from the panelists here. But since we've been asked to speak with a short amount of time, we will give one word each of kind of what we've seen in the homeschooling, parenting, family journey so far as a synthesis of our experience so far. And I hope it resonates with many of you. So, darling, ladies first.
One word with many explanations. I'm just kidding. So the one word for me has really been modeling. As we homeschool our kids, we realize we can't pass on the values that we want them to internalize if Edric and myself aren't aligned on what we're modeling to our children. And like most of you, your goal is not just academic success. It really is life success. And how do children understand what life success is? Well, a lot of times it's by watching the adults in their lives, and if the adults are thriving and if the adults have healthy relationships, that defines what life success is for them. And so I feel like it's kind of echoing what the Barbers already said, but for us, when we talk about modeling, just to expound on it a little bit more, this is really the challenging part, because when you're homeschooling, your kids are with you 24/7. They see all your flaws, your character issues, your mistakes. And so as husband and wife, we really have to talk and dialogue and partner about what are we going to model when it comes to healthy relationships? What are we going to model when it comes to what it means to love God and love others, to serve others? How do we model joy in our relationship and to our kids? And how do we model healthy conflict resolution? So I remember during the pandemic, Edric had this brilliant idea. I love that word in the UK, brilliant. So he had this idea to wake the kids up like super early at 6 a.m. to exercise every day. And, usually as husband and wife, you really should discuss these things in private if you're in a disagreement with your spouse. And I immediately, in front of all the children, reacted and I said, that's impossible. There's no way. I mean, let's face it, homeschoolers do not wake up at 6 a.m. But he had this idea to make sure that all of us were healthy and well during the pandemic. And so I mistakenly challenged him in front of the kids. And it was so interesting because that same day during lunch, my oldest son, he goes up to me. He said, Mom, I need to talk to you about something. And he said, Mom, when you contradicted Dad in front of all of us, it empowered me to do the same. And I realized, and I struggled because I thought, if Mom can contradict Dad, maybe I can do the same thing with the authority figures in my life. And I thought, wait a minute, how did that connection happen? But it's true, like what we model, and sometimes we think it may be a small thing, but our children are picking these things up. And so what I had to do then in front of the children, and of course with Edric, is I apologized to Edric in front of the children.
Show an example of how you did that?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
You know it very well. And then, of course, to the children, I said, will you forgive me for my bad example? Daddy and I should have talked about that in private. And so thankfully, Edric did adjust the time to something more reasonable. I think it was 6:30. but honestly, it was great because we were healthy during the pandemic. We got COVID. Looking back, and it was a great blessing. But so what do we do to model authenticity? Because obviously our children see our mistakes, they see our flaws. So we have this regular thing that we do with our kids as a couple. We gather our children and we ask these questions. First, how can I improve? How have I hurt you? And will you forgive me? And we do this regularly because we may think like as parents, we're not doing anything wrong or our relationship is okay. But when we are accountable to our children and we ask those questions, we have to prepare ourselves with humility. And we have this rule where we're not allowed to be defensive. Yes. Not that we can't respond because that means that we're not like even acknowledging, but what Edric basically means is that we don't defend, we don't explain, and we just say, I'm sorry you feel that way, and will you forgive me? I didn't realize that, and I really want to improve. And so as we modeled that, we noticed that our kids would now do the same thing, and they would ask us, how can we improve, and will you forgive us? And they started doing it with each other. And those were like the best discussions. Those were hilarious, just watching our kids dialogue with one another. So as I close my part, as for our own relationship, we have this thing that we do too. Not only do we journey with other couples, because you really can't homeschool just as a single unit. You need others to come alongside you, and even in your relationship, in your marriage. And so we also ask one another on a scale of 1 to 10, how's our marriage doing, and what will make it a 10? And that has greatly helped us to be able to model to our children what healthy relationships look like, what healthy conflict resolution looks like, and it's made for just a healthier dialogue and open communication in our family.
Right. So how's our marriage from 1 to 10?
11.
11. That's fantastic. Okay, I'm done. So my one word, if my wife's word was modeling, the one word that I think about to synthesize the experience so far is intentionality. I've learned that, as a parent, you can either be an incidental parent or an intentional one. So I'm a sports guy. So if this was sports, you can either play defense or offense. And in parenting, you don't want to be a defense parent where things happen, there are problems, and then you respond. And because we have so much time with the kids, even if I'm not the one homeschooling, for the record, I get to see so much more of what's happening, and they get to see so much more what's happening in our lives. So I've realized I cannot be an incidental dad. I cannot be an incidental husband. I need to be an intentional one. So what does that look like practically? Joy talked about the how can I improve situations, or the how can I improve conversations. We do that once a week as a system for our marriage. So we have date nights. We usually go out on Mondays as our date night because in Philippines, this is after all the hullabaloo of the weekend, and it's usually calmer when you go out. So we like that. And it's also cheaper. Things are cheaper, so that's our date night. And in those date nights, we ask those conversations. Hey, babe, how are you? How can I improve? And we do it in a neutral environment. We don't do anything pragmatic like, have you checked the credit card bill statements? Have you paid for these things? We don't do that. So I think as a husband, intentionality in supporting her homeschooling also does that, because I'm able to just say, hey, how are you? How else can I support you? Is there anything that I can improve on that I have done in this week? And then we do that rating scale that Joy talked about. For our children, intentionality is once a week. Ideally, we also have a date day with the kids. So I cancel all my meetings, even our GHEX nighttime meetings, because it's night for us there. So we try and make sure that we block that off. That's on Thursday nights for us. And the same thing, we ask our kids. We do something they enjoy, and we ask them those questions. How can we improve? How can each other improve? And it's surprising the things they say. So that word really changed me, because I realized when we are intentional, we're able to not just build systems, which I like to do, but also get deeper in understanding where they're at. One last thing in building and being intentional. I talked about in one of our sessions on leadership, I talked about this quote of James Clear where he said, we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So one of the intentional things I like to do is build systems for our family. I set up a set of goals for our children every year, even as I lock in with my wife the academic things she will cover.
On a spreadsheet.
On an Excel spreadsheets. And I follow a biblical framework. We're Christians. We like to follow Luke 2:52, Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, favor with God and men. So kind of 4 key areas and just one big thing. So for the year, what's that one big thing? We lock that in. We set that up, and then we start working around. We work around systems. So, what will we get done in the first quarter as far as helping them grow in stature, music, those things? I found that to be a very helpful system because when the year is done, then we can check. Did we get this done? How are we growing in these areas? What else can dad improve on? I like to apply those principles in our family because, in very much the same way as the organizations that I'm involved in, it helps just move us along and see that we are growing and moving together as a family. So, closing lines for us. I shared yesterday that if we were to summarize all of what we're seeing in the short time we've been doing this compared to all of the amazing panelists here, really, homeschooling has homeschooled us, right? It has changed us and continues to do so. So we have a long way to go with our 5-year-old, but we've seen some gains in the 21-year-old. And, we are eager to continue to learn from and journey with other leaders such as the panelists here. So thank you again for your time. That's our sharing.
So we're going to take Silvia, the Copio's time, but I'm going to do half of it in Portuguese. I'm just teasing. Oh, they're here. They are here. Good. Come up. Do you want us to hear it? You want to hear us do that in Portuguese?
Oh, Silvia, let's go. We're waiting for you. It's your time. Well, now 4 minutes left. I'm just kidding. We have a strict timekeeper here.
So I began to explain that I was doing my research presentation, and I didn't notice that it was at the same time. So that's the reason. Well, let me start by saying that I can realize how happy we are being right now as a family when I'm here with my husband receiving WhatsApp messages for our family group from our 3 kids that are alone at home, sharing with us things that they do when we are not with them. You know what I mean? So they have 17, 19, and 23. So that's a good age to do things without the parents. But at the same time, we do lots of things together. But for me, realizing that we are succeeding is knowing that my kids are getting along together, planning, doing. And sometimes I believe that my family is a small world inside my house because, yes, all the family members are different, right? But I don't know what is happening with our family because we are really different from each other. When we begin to date, one of our best friends said to us that you are such an improbable couple. And we didn't understood at the time, but I think I know what that means because, I'm the dreamer one. If I was not married with Paulo, probably I was flying with some wings or something on the clouds, not eating, not living in a real life. And Paulo is the one that brings me down and puts reality in front of me. And I feel that we are celebrating 25 years of marriage this year. Thank you. And what I see now is that our differences is what makes our family so successful as a family. And what do I mean as a succeed family? A family that respects, that sometimes fight, right, Paulo? We fight. Can we share that we fight? No. But a real family that are preparing their kids for the real world. Let them be. That is one of my main values. Let them be. Let them be what they really are. That's mainly important. So about homeschooling. I was the one dreaming, So yeah, I got home one day and I said, "Look, Paulo, we are going to take away our kids from school." They were attending school, 2 of them. And Paulo, by the way, is always the one that says, "Okay." And I say, "But do you agree?" They say, please say something. Do you agree? I'm joking. And I don't know, about 1 month later, I make the question. Paulo answers me, I don't know if I agree, but now we already are doing it. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. We were together on this since the first minute, but at the same time with these different characteristics. Yes, I'm the one that I'm already with the ideas, knowing what I want to do. And I realized that I have to respect Paulo's rhythm. That is a rhythm that, with needs of feeling safe and knowing what he's doing and what to achieve. And probably he's not agreeing with me, what probably would make us show you how we fight here in public.
I
No,
speak?
no, you can. Go ahead.
So I will try not to say nothing against her. But one question, one problem is problem or something else is I need information to make decisions. And when she's coming to me to say, let's going to do homeschooling, she thought about that for 3 or 4 days or 1 month.
No, 3 days.
But I didn't thought nothing about that. So I need information. So what answer can I ask? Say to her, nothing, not yet, not yes, not no, because I don't have information. So I need to think about that. What we know, it's first of all, the children are not ours, so we are their parents, but we are not the owners of them. So what we try to do is to do the best for them, without knowing if we are doing the best. That's my thought. So when I will see that, probably I will see that when they will have 40 years old and I'm a grandfather and something will happen. So what I hope now is that they can live a life like that they want, and in a way that they fulfill their dreams and their expectations. That's what we want to do with them. And homeschooling give us that, because we can personalize things. More Silvia than me, yeah, it's true. But the relationship that we get with them, we only are seeing the relation we create at this moment, not when we were with them at school. At school, no, sorry, at home. I have a dream for Silvia. It's I like to run, so I don't like to run. I like to make trails. It's a little bit different of running, but my dream is to go with Silvia and them running for a mountain and be there for 2 or 3 days running, but they don't want to do that with me, so I have to go alone and try to inspiring them to do things in their way, not in our way, but in their way. So it's something like this. Yeah. You want to say something? No. And I am the husband here. So when I come here, I'm always the husband of Silvia, nothing more. It's one of my rules. It's the husband of Silvia, not Paulo, but the husband, only the husband. So if you want something, talk with Silvia, and Silvia will talk with the husband.
Now I have something to say. No, we realize that we have different skills. I'm more communicative than Paulo. Well, in Portuguese, he's as much communicative as I am. But the way homeschooling goes is that way. We just feel what is our role in a not non-rational way. You know what I mean? So it just happened that it was me that was mentioned to be at the advisory of GHX and other things, but I would not do nothing without you, Paulo. So you know that, because you support me a lot and you respect my rhythms. And having our kids seeing that, as you said, each day, and not having to explain how it was our work day, having our kids with us is really building this unity that we really have in our family now. So it's amazing. And thank you. And for me, I will finish one more thing because I have 1 minute. The last thing. It's an honor to be here with you, because in Moscow, I was attending and dreaming on having you, so many of you, as an inspiration for us. So thank you for what now we all are doing for the world. I think it's so important, and thank you. I'm honored to be here with you. Thank you.
Here's our timer.
Yay. Boy, what an awesome PowerPoint. The best PowerPoint so far of the presentation.
Yes, that's true. So Joe and I have been, next month we'll be celebrating our 47th anniversary. And as Joe would say, but I have the mic, 45 of those have been happy. And thank you. I'm not the funny one, so every once in a while I tell a joke, but they're usually his. So when I was really thinking about what we wanted to share, and so many great points have been said that we can improve on, I want to talk about conflict, because we are seeing a lot of homeschool marriages end. They didn't learn to resolve the conflict when the kids were home and the kids leave and the marriage is over. And so we've had our fair share of conflict, and I'm just going to quickly tell you about our biggest fight, but how it's impacted and changed our marriage. And to do that, some of you were in the other session, but you just need to know when we started homeschooling in '84, it was terrible. We were denied by our school district. I was threatened with jail by the state superintendent of education. Had I not worked for a U.S. senator when I was in high school, and my dad called him and he came down and met personally with the state superintendent of education, I would have been in jail. And so then even though we got permission to homeschool, we had policemen driving by our house every day or every other day. We had people at church who wouldn't talk to us. We had neighborhood people who wouldn't let our kids play with them anymore. We knew nobody in the world who was homeschooling. And so the worst of it is how much it upset Joe's parents. So even with all this outer turmoil, that first year of homeschooling was so incredible in terms of what it did for our family. I looked at Joe and I said, I'd really like to do this another year. And he said, I was afraid of that. And then we laughed and we talked about it. And I said, there's only one thing that I ask you to do, and that is you tell your parents. Last year, I had to tell the world, the government, the governor, the newspapers, everybody was in our house talking about this crazy family that's homeschooling. And he said, okay. So, so it gets to be June. Don't forget, we start school in August. Tell your parents, okay. So then it gets to be July. Don't forget, tell your parents. I mean, this was a really big deal. It sounds like a really small thing, but we had close families, and homeschooling just almost destroyed one of them. And so it gets to be August. And I tell Joe, school starts this month and your parents are going to Europe for 3 weeks. So you really need to tell them we're homeschooling. Okay, honey, I got it. So the day before they leave for Europe, Joe's mom calls and says, hey, we're having a surprise party for Earl tomorrow. Just bring the kids and come over. And I looked at Joe and I said, okay, but I'm going home with the kids and you're going to tell your parents. And he said, got it. So then I get a call from Joe the next day. Oh, honey, you're not going to believe this. I have clients coming in from California. I've got to play golf with them today, and I'm going to be late for the party. I said, no problem. I'm still leaving early. You talk to your parents. Okay. So I took my 2 boys who were 5 and 7 aside, and actually my 5-year-old, I didn't need to talk to him. I talked to my very talkative 7-year-old. I said, there are 2 things we're not going to tell Granddaddy tonight. Okay. One is what we got him for his birthday, because you don't tell him there's a sweater in the package. Okay. Let him open it. And the second one is where you're going to school this year. But Mommy, we love homeschooling. I know, but let's let Daddy tell Grandmammy and Granddaddy. Okay. So we walk into this party, and it seemed like there were 300 people there. There were probably 40. And my little 5-year-old, who's very quiet, says to me, Mommy, can I give Granddaddy his birthday present? And so in front of all these people, John walks up, and he says, Granddaddy, there are only 2 things I'm not supposed to tell you tonight. What's in the box, and where we're going to school next year. And Ty can't stand it. He says, Granddaddy, we love homeschooling so much. Would you please tell me why you hate it like you do? Now, this is with an audience of their friends. And so, thank goodness, one of my sister-in-law's friends took over the conversation, changed the subject, and I am dying. But I'm also so mad at Joe, I can hardly stand myself. So, there are 2 things I can say about our marriage. One is Joe is totally unflappable, and I am not. And so, Joe, I should give you the mic, but I'm not. This is my time. So Joe finally comes in, and he said he could see the lasers shooting out of my eyes when he looked in the window and saw me. And I looked at him and I said, I'm going home. You bring the kids. And so he brought the kids. I left. He brought the kids home. And I'm so mad at him. I'm so mad at him for putting me in this position that I get in my minivan and I leave. Now, I'm not going to my parents' or Joe's parents' house because our marriage doesn't work that way. I couldn't afford to spend a night in a hotel if I wanted to. So I went to Bilo grocery store and ate chocolate. And I'm trying to decide, what am I going to do about this? I'm so mad. And I was right. And so and then I thought, wait a minute. This is my best friend. I do not want to be mad at him. I cannot homeschool without him. I can't be a parent without him. We can't have a marriage without him. And so I thought, okay, this ends here. So I went back to the house, and Joe said he just sat on the front porch for his own safety and well-being, and was going to let me go inside. And then it was okay. And it's such a silly story, but I want to tell you that conflict can wreck a marriage. We've got 47 years now. I can't imagine any other life. I can't imagine not homeschooling. I can't imagine not being married. But don't let conflict wreck your life. Always, there was just so much great information, but cherish your marriage and be friends. Laugh together. Joe always says the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. And so thankfully I have a husband who guards our relationship and guards the relationship with our children. And that has made homeschooling work. But you've got to learn how to deal with conflict. Not everybody deals with conflict in the same way, but you've just got to put your marriage first and safeguard it.
Awesome. In the 10 seconds I have left, no, I'll show you these slides. So I would really encourage you, regardless of your religious beliefs or anything else, you really have to have a vision for your marriage that's bigger than just you. Whatever that might be. Some people write it out, what their vision is for their marriage, what their vision is for their family, because really, without a good marriage, that's the best gift you can give your kids, is a great marriage, and to model the love that you have for your spouse in front of them. And if you do that well, you have grandkids, which we have here. This is so awesome. Here we are at Thanksgiving dinner. Expect conflict. I was really a homeschool agnostic. When Zan read the book and got all excited about homeschooling, I thought, oh man, we're crazy. We had just been through this thing with our parents where they were worried we were religious fanatics, and now here we go homeschooling. This is a whole new level of fanaticism. This is cultic. What is this? And but I kind of relented because I always, I knew that Zan would be doing most of the homeschooling, so I wasn't worried about that. And I finally decided, well, you can't mess up a kid in 5-year kindergarten. All they do is learn numbers and colors, and then lo and behold, our kid was colorblind. So there went that. But anyway, maybe he learned numbers. But we did it one year, and our family stayed so close, and I saw such great results from it year after year after year. And I remember along about junior high, Zan was thinking, well, maybe we should put them in school now because there's sports and there are higher levels of courses, foreign language, all that stuff. And I said, oh man, this is not the time to put them in, because this is when the girls are beauty queens and the boys are total geeks, and there are all these peer groups firing up, and drugs and all that other stuff. This would be the worst time to put them in school. And lo and behold, in those teenage years, they were our best friends. And man, that was a real payback. So if you're in those middle school years, just hang in there. When they're high school age, they're so much fun because they love to do the kind of things you love to do. So homeschooling does add new stress, but man, it's worth working through it. And you just need to figure out a way to work through it, because now you're a curriculum researcher, guidance counselor, teacher. Your spouse will have all kind of fears, or whoever's doing the education. Am I messing my kid up? That's the big fear. So you really have to calm those fears. And you'll be in homeschool leadership, which adds whole new pressure to your family. If you homeschool more than a day, you're a leader. Get to know your spouse and what communicates love to them. It's easy for us to do for our spouse what we think communicates love for us, but that might not be their language at all. They might like just the words of affirmation. That'd be awesome because that's cheaper. Physical affection, mine's quality time. I mean, my grandkids and my kids, if I have anything else from them, it's just quality time. That's why Christmas presents usually, I'm okay, but only because it expresses concern or care or love for me. So one of these is your love language, and one of those is your spouse's love language. Get to know them. And my practical advice, fund without complaint. I've witnessed so many fights at homeschool conventions over curriculum. Fund without complaint. I remember one guy was telling his wife, oh, we don't need all that curriculum. And he said, well, you didn't use half of what you bought last year. And then she said, do I need to take you into the garage? How many of those tools have you used? Anyway, that would really convict me of a crime. Encourage, analyze their fears, give them time off, and for goodness sake, keep dating your wife. Keep pursuing your wife. Thanks.
So 2 times the fun, double the trouble. So at our house, as soon as Bruce would walk in the door, it was 2 times the fun. And so you can imagine who the trouble was, because that's how the kids looked at me. I mean, I was the taskmaster all day long, and he was the fun guy. So that's where I kind of came up with the title for this workshop. So if you have any questions for these couples, we have a microphone because we're recording. If you can come up and ask a question, you can direct it to a specific person or couple, or you can just ask the whole board. Does anybody have any questions?
Going to bring the mic to them?
Yes, thank you. Or can you just come up here and ask?
Question for the whole panel. How do you introduce your kids to, in inverted commas, the real world, and help them when there's challenges? Sorry, there's a bit of an emotional story. I have three kids, 2 boys, 1 8, 1 10, and they go to a gymnastics class, and there was a couple of examples of bullying. So the boys found it difficult, but we also found it difficult in terms of they're used to a homeschooling environment where they're safe and they're looked after in lots of ways, and this was the opposite. But we didn't want to stop them going because they're going to have to get used to that in the real world where there's colleagues and lots of other people who are out to get you, or however you'd phrase it. So how do you do that in a positive way, or learn the difficult lessons?
Would somebody like to address the bullying?
Oh, you can buy a curriculum for that, I'm sure. But the reality is that we can have a discussion with our kids about a specific issue, but the way that they really learn is by watching you. The way that they really learn about how to handle bullying is by watching you handle bullying. Because it's the way that we deal with the things in life, whether that be a hardship, a financial difficulty, a marriage whatever it is, they're watching us. And whether we like it or not, we're teaching them. And that's scary, but it's real. And it's the way that we live. And that's where we have to go back and say, I didn't handle that properly. This is what I should have done sometimes. And it's living our lives in front of our kids and not hiding things from them and just living.
You want to go first?
How can I relate to that? So my middle one kid was suffering from bullying all his life. And now he has 19 years old. And two years ago, he told me, "Mom, I'm so lucky because I was born in a family that accepts me how I am." And I believe, and I strongly believe, that when a good attachment with us parents are provided, they will have the tools to don't doubt about who they are. At the same time, when we are living the moment of being having our kids being bullied, sorry, I can relate with the concerns that you are feeling, because it seems that it will never stop. But I can guarantee it will, because only for making the question, you are proving that you are already making your kids feel that you are with them. So that's the important thing.
We had the opportunity to help a homeless couple one time. This was a kid that I coached in basketball when he was 14, and he was he grew up on the street. I think his dad was a pimp. There were like 26 brothers and sisters he had. Horrible story, but I loved him and I understood him. He had so much anger, and I was constantly having to deal with that on the basketball court. And then as an adult, he got in some trouble, so he lived with us for a while. And I'll never forget, he said to us one night, he said, I thought you people didn't have problems like I had, but he said, I see you've got problems, and I see y'all just working through them. And the way Joe dealt with problems is he'd go beat people up, you know. So he straightened out his life, or relatively speaking, and he learned a lot from just watching us deal with problems. So I'm kind of echoing what the Huebner said, how important it is. And I don't think there's a perfect or good. There's probably some good and better ways to deal with it, but I think so much of it is a function of you and how you relate to your kid, how you relate to the whoever's running the organization. And I'm glad you're that involved. I'm glad your kid told you about being bullied. All those are definitely positive things. I think that puts you well on the path of helping your son work through that. And ultimately, I know you don't want to have to move classes or anything, but sometimes you end up having to do that. We were involved in a church when the youth group really went sour, and I didn't realize it. We were staying with this church that was kind of on a downward decline, and some bad things happened. And I realized, looking back, we should have moved before we did to a more positive situation. So that's kind of the nuclear option, and I know you want to avoid that. You want to do everything you can so you don't do that, because that's not going to be your son's solutions to that for the rest of his life.
We, I guess, feel that you always need to make sure that your kids know that you love them and that you have their back, and that if you are going to intervene, if you can, for them, talk to the parents, talk to the coach, talk to whomever. But sometimes these things just take care of themselves. I want to give an example, probably not the way you would think it would take care of itself. Our oldest daughter, extrovert, she just knows herself, strong-willed. And so, we're at church and there's a little boy that just likes to just bully people. So we're at church one night, we're in a Bible study, and the parents weren't there, but the grandparents of this little boy was. So the kids are out playing, and the little boy comes inside and he is just crying. Tiffany's just walking in just like this. And it turns out he was bullying her, and she just ran out and just slugged him right in the stomach. And so he is just bawling. And we're like, oh no, really? Well, the grandfather, he just started laughing. Then that's the best thing that could possibly happen to him. Guess what? There's no bullying after that. So it's not really the way you want it to happen, but that's an example in our life. And this was our little girl. She was 7 or 8 or something. She just hauled off and let this little boy have it. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, where is she? Uh-oh. You better stay here for a while. So anyway, that's just an example in our life, and I think Barb's got an answer as well.
You can deal with yourself. Your son can deal with himself. I'm assuming it's a little boy. But you can't really infringe on the bully, although our daughter did. Learned by example, maybe, I don't know. But you need to help him deal with his feelings too. And my dad was in the military, and I don't know if that means anything to those of you, but we moved a lot. And Bruce then was in the military, and our kids moved a lot. So I knew how to help them make friends. And sometimes when you're the new kid on the block, even if you're homeschooling, everybody kind of, and they might ignore you, they might bully you, but it's what you develop inside. Like, be the friend to somebody else that you want them to be. And I did find in my life that people that would pick on me and bully me, I was the new kid in school, that I would have to, instead of pushing them away, I'd have to draw them close. And even though I really didn't like them deep down, and I didn't grow up in a Christian household, I would still befriend them. I'd ask them over. I'd play with them on the playground. I'd do everything I could to try to make them a friend. And it didn't always work, but the closer they got to me, the less likely they were. I felt like that they were not physically hit me, but hit me with the bullying stuff. And so I worked on myself to try to be better to them, how I responded to them. And it was really hard as a kid because my mom was not like that. And so it was difficult to learn those as a child, but that's what I did. The other thing is, even though you might like this, was it gymnastics or something, even though you might like that class, it might be time to just take a break. Not forever, even if they're super good, Olympic bound, but take a break because they need that distance. They need to make that distance. So even though if, I'm saying pull them close in one instance, in this instance, you need to have the distance. So give it up. Maybe don't do it right now. Find a different place or something, but take a break. Let them know that they're safe at your house. Even though the world out there has things like that going on, they're safe when they're in your family. Okay, are there any other questions?
Well, I have relatively young kids, and I my biggest pain point is probably when basically our house is a mess. Yeah, but I mean, it's. I
If you're a homeschool mom, raise your hand if your house is a mess. There you go. You're in good company.
Well, it's trying to find the balance in that, because I know that when my husband comes home, because he also kind of homeschools our kids as well, that if everything's a mess, he's gonna have a hard time like thinking straight or doing anything, because he's coming home from work and he's gonna jump into whatever they're left off in. And I was trying to, I don't know, like if you have tips on what do you do with the younger ones when the older ones are studying? Like, how do you keep the younger ones from messing with the older ones? I don't know. So that's where I think I have the biggest stress. But that's it. That's my. I don't know if that was even a question. But.
That's a good question.
I think we have time for only one more response. Yeah.
We need to get on to the tea.
The tea starts right now. We're over time by half.
So maybe one quick answer from y'all. No, please.
Simplify. Isn't that what Jan said earlier?
I will try to be very quick because I don't want to be done. Okay. Yeah. No, it's a very quick, probably not the answer that you are expecting. First, you have to work on your expectations. And the house will be exactly the same way, but the difference is you will not feel that is a mess because it's part of the process. Okay? So, quick question, is that it? I do. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, panel. Let's give them a round of applause.